Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm back from my vacation. It's been a month plus and I've been on a social media detox and I haven't painted. So the past few paintings were all paintings that I did in advance. So this is my first piece to kind of break in back to the routine. And I've decided to paint something that I really enjoy, which is a bokeh landscape. So I hope you're not bored of it yet. But I'm glad to say that this turned out so much better than I expected. And I've also experimented with new techniques, so I'm kind of excited to show you guys. Anyway, first thing I'm gonna do is split the sky in half, maybe 70% on top for the sky and 30% for the road below. So I'm using, for the top part, cobalt blue, and over here I'm using titanium white mixed with sky blue, and I'm blending it in with a flat white brush. So I find that the wider the brush, the easier it is to blend, especially on a smooth white surface. And for the bottom, I'm using grey mixed with Prussian blue and also just a little bit of cobalt blue as well. And also, what I do is once I paint the first layer, I leave it to dry, and then on the next day, I'll go back at it to paint over the second layer. So this allows me to see if the paint is even, and then it also gives you this nice smooth finish. Once I'm satisfied, I take a chalk and then I'm just going to draw these two kind of like shapes at the side. I want to make sure that it's even because this is going to be a highway, so it has to mirror each other. So a little help from the ruler makes a lot of difference to get the angles in and the straight lines as well. So I'm going to draw this with a chalk and then I'm going to outline it in Mars black. And then I'm going to just paint this whole block here in Mars black mixed with a little bit of Prussian blue. I would say this is quite a minimalist piece, so there's not a lot of details going on because I want the lights, the bokeh lights, to be in the center of attention. So once this has been painted, I'm going to blur the background. So here's the close-up shot of how I do it. I mix the color of the sky and that black little block over there, and then I blend it in the middle. So I usually like to use like this brush, which is a little bit frayed around the edges, so it has this like very rough texture that is quite nice to blend in. So like over here as well, you can see again I mix sky blue and a little bit of black where the sharp lines are, and then I go in and I blend it until it becomes one gradient. So the objective of this is to remove the clarity of the objects, and in this sense you kind of blend out all the sharp lines so that you have this blurry effect. And also don't forget the ones below. It's a lot easier because the colors are similar, so I just mix black with a little bit of gray and I blend it together so it becomes less noticeable, just a little bit more subtle overall. Next, we're going to add road markings on the highway, and this will help to create perspective by drawing this V-shaped or inverted V-shaped line. I'm going to use white and mix it with cobalt blue and grey because plain white by itself is just going to be too glaring and I want it to blend into the background. And then at the sides, I'm going to also use the ruler to create those diagonal lines. And then once I've got the angles of it right, I'm going to paint and also blur these markings. So when the object is thin like these lines, it's actually a lot harder to create that blurred effect. So you need a lot of patience, and this is a close-up shot of how I do it. First, I thicken the lines a little bit, and then I'm using a much thinner brush to blend it, taking it like as if I'm using a color pencil. Just very lightly go back and forth, and make sure to soften all the lines. So in the middle, the white lines, I use white mixed with blue, and then around it I match the color of the road, and then that's what I use to just blend it and soften all the edges around the lines. So make sure to do the same for these two lines as well. And for this line, I want it to be a bit darker because it's at the side, so I don't want too much attention to it. So I'm painting it with a little bit more dark blue, and then I add just a little bit of white towards the middle, so it creates a more elongated effect on the line. So remember, when doing thin lines, when you want to blend it to create that blurred effect, just treat your brush like a color pencil. So this is my favorite part. We're going to add all the lights. So what you want to do is just to first draw out the circle so you get the placement of it. For this batch over here, I'm going to draw them in orange and red. And then on top of this row of bokeh circles, I'm going to draw a cluster of them in orange and yellow and a little bit of white, just in kind of lighter shades. You're supposed to resemble highway lights in the distance, a little bit blur and a little bit sparkly when you sort of like squint your eyes when you're tired from driving. When it comes to painting a bokeh landscape, balancing is also very important. So I'm going to balance it out on this side with also the same cluster of lights, but just a little bit different because it doesn't have to mirror each other. Another tip is that you can also draw your bokeh circles smaller, so it allows you room to make adjustments. Like for example, here it's a bit small, so I'm able to make adjustments by painting it bigger. Okay, so remember earlier on I was talking about this new technique that I really liked for this whole piece. So what I want to do is I want to also soften these bokeh lights that are in the background, and then I'm going to paint a solid bokeh light in front of them, but not as many, so that it kind of just stands out a lot more. So what I'm doing right now for the first row of bokeh that I've painted, I'm going to blur it. And when I blur it, what I do is I want to make it look a little bit more translucent. So I'm going to use the background color and I'm going to mix it with the color of the bokeh, and I'm going to paint over it, and I'm going to blend the edges around the circle. So now you can see that the background bokeh is a little bit more grayish because I mixed it with the blue, and it also looks a lot softer. So when I paint the solid bokeh in front in its original color, then it stands out so much more. I find that it also adds so much depth to the bokeh. Instead of all of them in solids, your eyes are kind of just looking at the whole patch of dots. But when you blur the background bokeh and then you add the solid bokeh in front, then you're able to see it a lot clearer, but not too scattered. Does that make sense? But anyway, here's the close-up shot of how I blend the background bokeh. I mix the color of sky with orange and then I paint over the bokeh. But I also add a bit of white because blue and orange creates this very muddy effect. So you always have to add a little bit of white when the color isn't very harmonious. And then I use the same technique as I did with the lines. I just continuously blend around the circle very softly like a color pencil. And then until like the whole sharp lines are softened, then you get that nice blurry effect. And then once that is done, I just add a few more bright lights. Like on top there, I add a white bokeh circle and a yellow bokeh circle. And then those two are going to be the lights that stand out. And I do the same for this cluster over here. So here's another close-up shot in real time for you to see. And then when I pull the camera back, I think you're able to see it much clearer when we paint the solid bokeh over the blurred bokeh. So what I like to do is I like to start from the middle and I slowly branch out, especially when I'm drawing bokeh. So now I'm just going to mark out the bokeh on the left side of the canvas. On the top there is going to be the highway lights, and at the bottom I'm going to kind of draw this string of lights along the black little thing that we drew earlier. And it's going to be more white lights because on this side of the highway there are going to be more headlights, and on the other side of the highway it's going to be more brake lights, so it's going to be more red on the right side. Right now I'm also just marking it out, and then once I've kind of done my placement of bokeh for the left side, then I'm going to move on to the right side, and then I'm going to also add the lights on top. But remember, it doesn't have to exactly mirror each other. You just have to balance it so that it doesn't look too cluttered on one end or a little bit more blank on the other. So you just have to balance it. and that's all you need to do. So here I'm just adding more red, and remember, you don't have to mirror it. So I'm going to add more red here and a little bit more scattered white lights and the distance on the top part. And when I talk about balance, because red is also a much stronger color, and when you line that up together, it can just draw a lot more attention to it. So you can see that there are less circles on the right side compared to the left side. Now we're going to continue to the second step, which is to also blur the circles. But because I want to create perspective in this, so on the sides of it, like the circles closer to the edge of the canvas, it's supposed to be closer to us. So we're going to add more solid circles, solid bokeh for this part of the painting. Like over here, I'm going to blur the background, but on each of these brackets of bokeh, I'm going to add a solid colored bokeh in white or just white mixed with yellow. Also, be a little bit wary when you're mixing the blue to the yellow bokeh circles that you want to blur. Make sure to add a little bit more white in it, because blue and yellow will create this very greenish tint. So when you add a little bit more white, then you're able to kind of like mitigate that a little bit. So over here, I'm painting the last 3 circles that are towards the edge of the canvas in solid white, and a little bit more solid as we draw the attention to the front of the canvas. And on this side, for the red, because it's on the black side, the darker side of the shape, so you mix it with Prussian blue and the shade of the red, and then you paint over it and blur the circles. And I want this the solid bokehs here to stand out a little bit more, so I'm mixing white with red, and you get this very nice pink, bright pink circles. So it's just a little bit more to go, and the technique is pretty much the same. Just remember to mix the background color on top of the bokeh that you want to blur out, so you have that kind of transparent look, and then in between you add the brightly colored bouquets that are solid so that it will stand out. Also, for the solid bouquet, I'm actually using acrylic wash because it has this very nice opaque color that I think stands out a lot more when painted over the acrylic. So you could also try to experiment with that a little bit, and I actually kind of like how it turned out. I hope you find this tutorial useful. I think as much as I try to explain it, it's just so much easier when you look at the close-up shots. And also, this 14-minute long voiceover is killing me inside. So I'm going to end it here, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this painting. It's actually my new favorite. I had a similar one, I think about last year, but when I redo this, I actually like this version so much better. And if you like it, this painting is available on Etsy. The link is in the description, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Goodbye.